well, now we're gonna go over to the mask, and the mask is a fun part, I would say, for this character, because it will allow us to explore a couple of things that I want to talk about in how we can add some detail to very simple garments. Right now, all of these garments are very, very simple that we've been doing, but I really like the result that we're getting so far. I'm a little bit concerned about this one's right here. Did we change the... Oh, yeah, we made them elastic, right, to hold a little bit better. I actually want to change that real quick, so let me just remove the elastic property. There we go. And what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to just go to the center, just make them smaller. There we go. And that should perfect make it go exactly like that. Now the pants are falling down again. Here's another thing that we can do, and I don't think I've mentioned this before, but we can actually pin the cloth to the character, okay? So let me grab this like pieces of fabric real quick. I'm gonna right click and I'm going to, again, shift Q to hide them just a second. And then I'm gonna go here to this pins or tags, and we can do tag on avatar. So I'm gonna grab this point right here, I'm gonna tack it over there. I'm gonna grab this point right here, I'm gonna tack it over there. I'm gonna grab this point right here, tack it over there, and this point right here, and tack it over there. And tags are really good because they're gonna like literally push things up. So that's a very cool way in which we can make sure that things stay where we want them to stay. Let's go over here and let's select again the pieces that we hit, Shift Q, and this one right here, Shift Q. So instead of freezing, we can, as you can see there, tag them, and that's another way in which we can ensure that things are just like folding and moving the way we want. Here we can just like do a little bit of correction. There we go. Now let's talk about the mask. Of course, the mask, we need to think of it as a sort of like a side view for our character. So I'm going to go to this part right here. I'm going to go to my polygon creation tool. We're going to start at the roughly here at the point, and I need to imagine that there's going to be a face like going right around here. Then we're going to have the chin, and then it's going to be the neck, kind of like this. And over here, I'm going to do just one curve, another point right there, and let's do another curve, and there we go. So this is going to be like roughly the shape of the mask. We're going to be, of course, like modifying some of these points, but in this case, since we're not really following a pattern, we just need to get this thing as close as possible. This is a question that I get asked very often about, like, should we be like downloading patterns and things like that from the internet to make sure that it looks as realistic as possible? The answer is yes. I mean, they help, but a lot of the patterns are made for actual tailors. So they have a lot of instructions that don't really work here inside of Marvelous. And in my personal experience, it's better if we understand how the tools work so that we can like imagine and create things like this. So I'm going to Control D this thing right here. There we go. And here we're going to use free sewing, of course. So we're going to use the free sewing tool. We're going to sew the front part of the mask like this. And we're going to sew the back part of the mask like this. This is why segment sewing is so useful, because you don't need to worry about the amount of segments or anything. And now if we simulate, as you can see, we're going to have this mask going on top of the character. We can push it out. Now, since this piece of mask is smaller, that means that the amount of particles that it has is also smaller, right? We've talked about this before on the properties. So usually with a smaller piece of fabric, I'm going to use a smaller particle density to start with so that we don't have as many issues with the collision. Because you can see, for instance, here on the ears, we're already getting a little bit of a problem there with the collisions. There we go. That looks a little bit better. I like the fact that we get some like interesting wrinkles there on the back. I don't like the pointy bit that we're getting there on the face. I would like this to be more of a round shape. And I've seen some reference where this mask actually goes over the nose like this, kind of like a rubber. So something like this is probably going to be more historically accurate. Now you can see that we're starting to get this horrible things right here. And this is amazing. I planned this ahead because this is where I can teach you about a very cool function that we have inside of Marvelous and inside of like tailoring in general, that's called darts. So darts, when I learned about darts, I was so excited because it's such a fun thing. If you have a round object, okay, and you cover it with a cloth, what's going to happen is that there's always going to be these sort of like pointy bits where the cloth cannot properly fold on top of the element. So this happens a lot in women's garments, especially on the breast area. So what they need to do is they need to create something called a dart. So if you see a t-shirt, right, like a male t-shirt pattern, it's going to be fairly square because our bodies, especially as males, they tend to be fairly square. But for females, you're going to see that they have this sort of like hourglass shape. Well, this thing right here, this cut that they make on the side, that's actually a dart. A dart is literally this sort of like rhomboid shape that you can have on your clothing that removes fabric so that it conforms to the shape a little bit better. Now, there are a bunch of different darts. One of my favorite ones, if you want to research a little bit about it, is called the princess dart, which is what they use for corsets, where the dart, instead of being this sort of like sharp rectangle, it's more like a curve. It's very, very form-fitting. You see this a lot in wedding dresses. And the thing about darts is, again, they remove volume. They remove extra fabric that you might have, and they conform to the shape of your object a little bit better. So as you can see right here, on this point right here, we got a lot of extra fabric, and it would be cool if we could remove that extra fabric to only leave the character with the open eyes, right? Let's get this on top. So the dart tool can be found right here on the internal lines. It's called the dart tool, and it's very easy to do. You just click on one point, which in this position, I think it's this one right here, and you're going to get this dart. Now, this is the complete dart, which is really, really good. But in this case, we're actually not going to be using that specific tool. I'm actually going to go to the patterns, and I'm going to right click, and there's an option here, right here, click where we can add a dart. Where is it? Now we need to select the point. So we're going to transform point segment. We're going to select this point, right click, and add a dart. And as you can see, we're going to get half a dart. So instead of getting like the full rhomboid shape, we're only going to get one triangle. And if we hit OK, look at that, what happened right there. We just cutted a triangle for that area. And if we simulate, this thing is going to be a little bit more stretched because this dart right there is removing some volume from that particular area. Now, of course, the dart that we're actually looking for, it's not there. It's a little bit lower, so right around there. And the first thing we need to do is we need to add a point. So we're going to go add point segment. We're going to add a point right there, hit enter. And then if we select the point, transform point segment, we can right click and add the dart. Okay. And you can see it cuts right through there. Now, the cool thing is we can actually modify this dart, make it a little bit bigger on both sides. And what happens with the dart is that you sew one side of the dart to the other. You can manually create this dart if you're using the polygon tool and then just like sew it together. But in this case, it's a lot easier to do it this way because it will automatically do this that we're trying to look for. I'm going to try like here. I think we might need a little bit more like, what's the word? We might need a little bit more polygons here for the nose. We already have them. So I'm just going to kind of like push this guys up a little bit more. This guy's out. That should give me enough volume. There we go. See, that's a little bit better. And then I can see that these 2 points definitely need a sewing line. So I'm going to do segment sewing, and we're going to sew those two guys together. Much better. Much, much better. Now, the cloth is a little bit too tense, and we know how to fix this, right? We can grab both patterns, go to the shrinkage weft. Let's change this to 110, and this one. Well, 110 is a little bit too much, so 105. There we go. That's gonna just relax a little bit more. Now, I'm not gonna worry too much about like this part of the face because it's gonna be covered by the mask, but I do want to show you some of the tools. So, for instance, this point right here, it's definitely like drawing me the wrong way. So I'm gonna change it a little bit. Actually, I'm gonna delete it. There we go. And by deleting it, you can see that now we have more sort of like square view. Now we have an extra like sewing line right there. So let's go to edit sewing. Let's delete that sewing line. Oh, that's not the sewing line that I want to delete. Well, it is, but not completely. Let's go to free sewing, and we're going to sew again the top part with the top part right here. And there we go. So now we have a more interesting effect there for the mask. Start moving it around. I feel like even at this point, the amount of particle density that we have is a little bit too small still. So I might go here and just lower this to, it was at a 10, I believe. Let's go all the way to 5. And that's very, very common. Like the smaller the garment, the more particles you might want to have to get a nice effect. But I really, really want to have like all of these wrinkles here on the back. Now, what I want to do is I want to continue this mask and kind of like fall on top of this thing. We're going to have a leather sort of like cape later on, but I want this to really fall down onto the character. And it can just fall down like naturally, like we just extend this element, but I kind of want to flare it out a little bit. So first, I'm going to grab this edge right here. I'm going to do an offset as pattern outline. This is different. We haven't done this one right here. And actually, that's the whole pattern. I just want to do offset as... It's not internal line. No, yeah, that's pattern outline, but I don't want to offset. I'm going to do right angle corner. Let's try this at 50. Well, let's try a big number. So 200. There we go. That's better. So as you can see, if we do default corners, I think it goes all around. In this case, it's not going all around. I'm just going to keep this like this and hit OK. And what this will do is it will, of course, extend the whole thing, right? So now we have this, this whole like cape going around. But we know, because we saw this on the tablecloth, that usually if we want this to look a little bit nicer, we need to make sure that this is sort of like a half a circle, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move this point up like this. Okay. And then we're going to add another point right here in the center. And we are going to edit that point. Go. We're going to move that point, so transform point segment, we move it out, and we do a curvature. So curvature group point. There we go. So now, if we do this, and we, of course, check the segment sewing, we need to sew this front part right here, and we need to sew this back part right here. We should be able to get the result that we're looking for. Let's just make sure that this is... I feel like that's... something seems to be a little bit off. Let's reset the element. Now, remember this thing that we used to reset? Well, you don't want to reset all of the 3D arrangements because you're going to like lose a lot of the work that we've done already. So you can just right click and just reset the 3D arrangement of the selected objects. That way, it should be a little bit easier to figure out how this thing is like attaching. I mainly want to make sure that all of the like sewing lines are going in the proper direction. They seem they are. Now this one, I'm also going to change the layer. This is going to be layer 1 because I want this to be on top of the shirt. And now if we simulate, have a very nice mask right here. Now it's just a matter of moving it, tweaking it, and making sure that it's right where it needs to be. You can use this to do like a military divers and things like that, like Tom Clancy sort of like spy stuff. The executioners, right? Again, in fantasy, they usually were wearing like this or like a hood on top. So it's a very, very cool way to work. And the most important thing that I wanted to talk about on this particular video was the darts. As you can see, allows me to reduce the amount of stretch and extra area that we have here around the eyes. And also, of course, the what's the word? The symmetry, right? Like we're working on a different symmetry right now. Instead of doing back and forth, we're working on a side-by-side basis. So yeah, that's pretty much it. This is the mask for the character. At this point, you can just like keep tweaking and modifying things. If you feel like you need another dart or you need to make that dart a little bit more intense, we can change it around. I think I'm gonna keep it like this, like right beneath the nose. I don't know. We kind of did the nose, right? So it might be a good idea to add the nose right there. That looks really, really good. I really wish we could take away or take out the what's the word? The blue lines so that we can see the pattern like completely normal. But unfortunately, we can. You can set everything back to layer 0, but then you might have some issues as well on the rest of the character. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. I'm going to stop the video right here. And in the next one, we're going to go over how to add a little bit more detail to all of these elements. I want to add some detail to the mask and I want to add some detail to the bands. We're going to be using internal lines and another little trick that I'm about to show you. So let's stop it right here. Make sure to get to this point. Make sure to save, very important. And I'll see you back on the next one.